René Descartes, the 17th century French philosopher, radically opposed traditional theological views and emphasized reason and individualism rather than tradition. Descartes' rationalism is a belief that opinions and actions should be based on reason and knowledge, rather than religious beliefs. Before Descartes' introduction of rationalism, people credited the higher beings as the answer to all questions, often turning to the church rather than answering their own questions. However, Descartes' stance against these views initiated a change in the course of thinking, disconnecting the world from traditional beliefs that were taught by ancient philosophers, such as Aristotle, a 4th century BC Greek philosopher who dedicated his life to studying, teaching, and writing philosophy. Aristotle's philosophy was later regarded as Aristotelian scholasticism, a term used to reference Aristotle's work by medieval and early modern universities. While attempting to understand the world and its existence, Aristotle credited God as the prime mover, claiming that God was the source of all causation and movement. This belief served as the foundation for the Puritans. The Puritans were English Protestants who regarded the Reformation of the Church as insufficient and sought to create their own form of worship. They supported the concept of predestination and followed the words of the Bible very strictly, which they considered God's laws. The Puritans believed that they were chosen by God as a model for other societies and followed a way of life purely based on religion. The placement of religious beliefs over human intellect was a commonality at the time. Descartes recognized this and said, "I was convinced that our beliefs are based much more on custom and example than on any certain knowledge." People trusted God rather than thinking for themselves. However, the influencers of the Enlightenment attempted to challenge this idea. During the late 17th and 18th centuries, the radical development and change of European politics, philosophy, science, and communication pushed Europe into an intellectual movement that emphasized reason and individuality rather than tradition. This age of reason, otherwise known as the Enlightenment era, was heavily influenced by the 17th century philosopher René Descartes, who is commonly associated with the phrase, "I think, therefore I am," and rarely as the significant figure who took a stand against Aristotelian ideas of his time. Descartes was an ardent rationalist who strived to focus his work on not wondering the origins of the world, but rather on how people can understand natural phenomena. These beliefs separated Descartes from Aristotle and other thinkers of his time. He wanted to find a systematic meaning of knowledge by using mathematical methods. Descartes strived to advance and improve viable Aristotelian ideas by replacing simple scientific explanations with updated mechanistic reasoning. Further, he believed that Aristotelian scholars depended too much on the senses and not enough on doubt or questioning. Descartes believed that in order to be absolutely certain about anything, we must doubt anything that can be doubted. In his work, Meditations on First Philosophy, he writes, "The senses deceive from time to time, and it is prudent never to trust wholly those who have deceived us even once." That is to say, if we want to avoid error, then we must be cautious, questioning the reality of our existence and the information acquired from our faulty senses. Descartes emphasizes the importance of viewing your life from a different perspective, to properly analyze and differentiate between truth and deception. He also advocated the importance of improving oneself through self-reflection. He believed that the purpose of human existence was to be the best people we can possibly be, by using knowledge and thinking, stressing the idea that humans possess the capability of taking their own stances and making feasible decisions.
Known as the father of modern philosophy, René Descartes' notion on rational and logical reasoning attempted to reaffirm the unstable world by encouraging self-enlightenment. Descartes' radical attitude went on to influence an era of new beginnings, which in turn paved the course of modern philosophy. His stance against long presiding traditions enabled other intellectuals to voice their own opinions. When Descartes first introduced his philosophy on reasonable doubt, it motivated succeeding thinkers to share their own beliefs. The beliefs of Descartes and other thinkers prompted the Enlightenment. an intellectual movement that completely revolutionized Europe. This movement was propelled by many intellectual thinkers such as Thomas Hobbes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and in particular, John Locke. Intellectual thinkers like Descartes wrote their own textbooks, sharing personal ideas of idealized societies. Their works have gone on to change history, which began with Descartes' stance against traditional dogma. For instance, Thomas Hobbes wrote the Leviathan to insinuate his belief on benevolent human nature and the need of an absolute monarch. Jean-Jacques Rousseau expressed his opposition against a government that corrupts civilization in his book, The Social Contract. And John Locke, a balance of both Hobbes and Rousseau, proposed a government that prioritized the liberty and well-being of its people in his two treatises of government. Descartes was a staunch advocate of having individuals think for themselves, and the work of Hobbes, Rousseau, and Locke all garnered inspiration from Descartes and proposed a government that existed for the benefit of its citizens. Before the Enlightenment, monarchies were the dominant form of sovereignty throughout nations. Rulers justified their competence and position with God's intentions. A defining moment of history revolves around the views of Descartes and the Enlightenment, where sovereignty shifts from the self-proclamation of a monarchy to democracy, a more liberal form of government that allows the voice of the population to be heard.
One example is the American Revolution, a rebellion that aimed to institute the natural rights expressed by enlightened thinkers. Colonists successfully adopted a democracy in the United States by taking a stance against Parliament. The founding principles of the United States, first introduced in the Declaration of Independence, was heavily influenced by Locke. In his second treatise of government, Locke writes, "Men being, by nature, all free, equal, and independent, no one can be put out of this estate, and subjected to the political power of another without his own consent." Locke passionately believed that the government is morally obligated to serve and protect the life, liberty, and property of its people. These beliefs are deeply rooted in the Declaration of Independence, which states, "All men are created equal, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Locke was responsible for initiating the new beginnings of the United States with these eminent principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Both Descartes and Locke considered how our will should be directed, and how it is consistent with the decisions we make. They believed that free will does not limit our freedom. Instead, the more one person inclines in one direction, the more freely that person will be able to exercise their choice. Thus, the stances of both Descartes and Locke have an immense impact on the Enlightenment era, and brought great changes to the world. Dr. Gregory Sadler compared Descartes' role in the Enlightenment to the Beatles' influence on early rock and roll. As the group gained international popularity, people viewed them as an inspiration and strived to be like them. They too wanted to play a part in changing the traditional sound of music. In the same way, enlightened thinkers after Descartes strived to introduce a new way of thinking. Ultimately, Descartes instigated a change in the world he lived in with his stance against traditional ideologies. His philosophy spread, developed, and grew, forever changing society. His existence will remain credited in history as the father of modern philosophy, who guided society to new beginnings.